And you can go ahead and start whenever you're ready.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Heritage Register Public Information Center. My name is Patrick Buser. I'm a planner with the City of Brantford's Planning Department, and I am the project lead for the Heritage Register project. The city has retained Archaeological Services, Inc., and they are the consultant who's helping the city complete the Heritage Register project. Tonight I'm joined by a number of staff from ASI. Christina Martins and Annie Vea will be leading the presentation from ASI, and they'll provide an overview. Also, just like to let everyone know, this Property Information Center is being recorded, and we will be posting it to the City of Brantford's Neighborhood Planning Meetings YouTube page. Christina and Annie, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thanks, Patrick. So just a few things before we start on with our presentation. We will be giving a short presentation about the Brantford Heritage Register project and the background of the project methodology and how we got here. Just for your information, we kindly ask that you keep your microphones muted until we get to the question and answer period at the end of the presentation. And then we'll you'll have an opportunity to ask questions and we'll have a discussion. So tonight we're here to share factual information. We're here to answer any questions you might have about the process and the results of the project. We're here to facilitate discussion and listen to a range of views and opinions, and here also to identify next steps about what happens after this meeting. Next slide, please, Christina. So Patrick has already provided introductions. My name is Annie Vea. I was the consultant project manager, and Christina will be walking us through the presentation. She was the technical lead on this project. As I said, after the presentation, we'll have a chance for questions and answers. So Christina will go through our presentation in terms of information on heritage registers in general, provide some information, project background information on this particular project, go through our project methodology and how we got here today in terms of our recommendations, and then we'll get right into our question and answer period. So I'll give it over to Christina.
Thank you, Annie. Okay, just go to the next slide here. So to begin, we would like to provide information on municipal heritage registers. We're going to look at the benefits to the community of a heritage register and the implications of inclusion on a heritage register for a property owner. So what is a heritage register? A heritage register is a statutory requirement under the Ontario Heritage Act. The heritage register is kept by the clerk of the municipality and must include properties that have been designated for their individual cultural heritage value or interest under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Or groups of property can be designated that have collective cultural heritage value or interest under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Properties protected in this way are called designated properties. A heritage register may also include properties that haven't been designated under Part 4 or Part 5 of the Act, but are believed to be of cultural heritage value or interest. These properties are often referred to as listed properties. And tonight's meeting is to discuss your property becoming a non-designated property on the City of Brantford's Heritage Register. To add or remove non-designated properties from the Heritage Register, council approval in consultation with the Municipal Heritage Committee is required. There are many benefits to a community of including non-designated properties on a Heritage Register. A heritage register supports the City of Brantford's policies for cultural heritage conservation, and it identifies the cultural heritage resources that are valued by a community, and identifies and recognizes the many different types of heritage across Brantford's various neighborhoods. Including non-designated properties on the Heritage Register provides the city with a way to identify in a transparent way and monitor properties of potential heritage value. These properties may require special attention in the development review process. Inclusion on the Heritage Register also ensures interim protection from demolition. The Heritage Register also provides accessible, comprehensive information about heritage properties that can be used by many people, including developers, planners, community groups, tourism associations, educators, municipal staff, and private citizens. So depending on how a property is included on a heritage register, there are different implications. So we've talked about these two different types, a designated property and a listed property or a non-designated property. So the differences are here. A designated property, so those recognized as having cultural heritage value or interest through Part 4 or Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act, includes the registering of a municipal bylaw on the title of the designated property. When a demolition permit is submitted, the city has up to 90 days to review and make a decision to approve with conditions, or refuse the permit. And for alterations or renovations that may affect the designated property's heritage attributes, a heritage permit is required. For non-designated or listed properties, which is the focus of the protection we're discussing tonight, there are no legal documents registered on the title of the property. When a demolition permit is submitted, the city has up to 60 days to review and consider options for conservation. If a decision is not made within 60 days, then the demolition permit is processed normally. And for alterations or renovations, a heritage permit is not required. So next, we'll look at the background from the project and give you some of the history of how we've gotten to where we are today. Beginning in the 1990s, the city of Brantford began identifying property with potential cultural heritage value. These properties were documented through an informal inventory, and over the following 25 years, thousands of properties were added to that inventory. Over the course of the years, various methods were used to identify, document, and evaluate properties that were added to the inventory. This was a common practice in Ontario as a way to proactively understand properties that were potentially valued in a community. In 2005, the Ontario Heritage Act was amended, and that amendment enabled properties to be included. So these properties of interest could be included on a municipal heritage register as not designated. This amendment also enabled the review of demolition permits. The city of Brantford identified a need to review their informal inventory to confirm which properties should be recommended to move onto the heritage register through a council-approved process. ASI was retained in late 2017 to review and evaluate the informal inventory, which has over 9,000 properties. The key objectives of the project were to conduct background research, review the existing heritage inventory using a consistent methodology, evaluate properties using criteria that reflect Brantford's unique heritage and which are based on Ontario Regulation 906 of the Ontario Heritage Act, provide recommendations for properties to be included on the Heritage Register, provide a user-friendly, accessible database to house the Heritage Register, and importantly, to consult with the public. So we've conducted this project in two parts. Part 1 of the project was completed in 2 phases between 2018 and 2020. This part of the project included a review of the existing heritage inventory, consultation with public and the Municipal Heritage Committee, historical research, and the development of a thematic framework, identification of character areas, screening, field survey, and evaluation. This work recommended 832 properties for inclusion on the Heritage Register as non-designated or listed properties. In August of 2020, Council approved the listing of 98 priority properties, which have been included on the Heritage Register. Part 2 of the project was begun last summer in 2021, and tonight's meeting is part of the second of 8 phases that will be carried out through beginning last year through this year and then conclude in 2023. Each phase consists of consultation with property owners prior to properties being presented to the Municipal Heritage Committee and Council for a decision. So the next part of the presentation is to take you through the work that was conducted that resulted in the recommendation at the end of part 1 of the project. As part of our project, tools were developed to efficiently evaluate the 9,000 properties to determine which properties should be included as non-designated properties on the Heritage Register. We took on an approach that was systematic and rigorous. To gain an understanding of the individual properties and their context, we carried out work at 3 different scales. At the city-wide scale, a thematic framework was developed to understand the key significant themes across the city, when they happened, and why they happened where they did. The city was then divided up into neighborhoods based on local understanding of neighborhood divisions and the development pattern of how areas of the city became part of the city. At this neighborhood scale, it was identified where the themes occurred and what they looked like for different neighborhoods. For example, residential development may look quite different in one part of the city than another because of when that development took place. With these pieces in place, the individual properties were then reviewed to standardize the inventory data for the purpose of comparison and evaluation. And the understanding of the city and city area's important themes could then be applied to each property. During part 1 of the project, there were several points of contact with the community and stakeholders. The project team met with members of the 6 nations of the Grand River Consultation and Accommodation Policy Team, and staff of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation Department of Consultation and Accommodation. There were 2 public information centers held, which were advertised for anyone in the city to attend. At the first public information center, community members were asked questions about the history of the city, and they identified properties that may be of cultural heritage value through a mapping exercise. The second public information center presented similar information to tonight's presentation on the project, the methodology, and the recommendations. Requests for input from relevant public agencies, heritage organizations, and cultural groups were made. Information was shared about the project on the city's website, and meetings were held with the Brantford Heritage Committee, and a city area workshop was held with the Heritage Committee's Education Subcommittee. Additional properties that were not on the existing heritage inventory were identified as part of the engagement process and integrated into the project. So part 1 of the project involved the identification of significant historical themes and development of an understanding of how and where these themes have expressed themselves over time. The development of a city-wide thematic history framework provided the basic contextual structure for the systematic and consistent inventory and evaluation of properties in terms of their relationships to significant events, trends, and periods in Brantford's history of built form types. Within the thematic framework, important periods, events, and patterns of development were identified and organized into thematic categories. Those categories were agriculture, industry, residential, civic and institutional, and commercial. The thematic framework was also structured around a chronology of the city's development, focusing on the significant periods that defined and shaped the city as a whole, from its earliest Indigenous land use to the 21st century. Key events and trends for each thematic category were identified. A primary objective of part 1 of the project was the identification of how and where the city of Brantford's significant development themes physically materialized. This was achieved by linking time periods, key development themes, and associated land uses and built forms with specific areas in the city. This framework provides a system to consistently understand any building's potential cultural heritage value without requiring extensive knowledge about an individual building. We used things like location, architectural style, the built form, and prospective building ages. And through that, large numbers of properties were then organized and prioritized into categories of potential and known cultural heritage value. Through the research and analysis that we conducted, the city of Brantford was divided into 26 areas and assigned a corresponding name. These units we refer to as city areas. And then for the purposes of this part 2 of the project, city areas have been grouped into priority areas, and both of these are shown on the map. So priority areas are much larger areas of the city than city areas, and they're organized to help assist with these public consultations that we're carrying out. So after we had that research complete, we conducted screening. The goal of screening was to ensure that only those properties that had potential to be eligible for listing were documented during the field review and were reviewed for evaluation. We needed to narrow down those 9,000 properties to a manageable number to be able to visit them. Screening criteria were developed to capture properties that would best exemplify and communicate the history of Brantford. The criteria that were developed were designed to reflect community interest, communicate Brantford's history, and represent the breadth of building stock within the city. If a property met at least one of the screening criteria, it moved on to field survey. If a property did not meet any criterion, it didn't move on for further assessment. So then we went out and conducted field survey, visiting properties from the public right-of-way between May and August 2019 for all properties that met at least one of the screening criteria. So we ended up surveying around 4,000 of the properties on the inventory. And the goal of the field survey was to photograph the current existing conditions of each property and to update existing property information. The photographs taken during the field survey were then used to assess the material integrity of each property. So integrity is the authenticity of a historical resource's physical integrity, evidenced by the remaining characteristics that existed during the resource's period of significance. So we used a scale to categorize properties, and the scale was low, sufficient, or exceptional. So generally, a property that has low integrity retains few or no character defining features or has been substantially altered. Generally, a property that has sufficient integrity will retain a majority of its character defining features and will retain enough aspects of integrity to convey its significance. So replacement materials may be present, so as long as they don't affect the overall integrity of the design. And similarly, if an addition is present, to be considered sufficient, that addition must be subordinate to the overall character of the building. Increased age and rarity of the property type may also lower the threshold required for sufficient integrity. We understand that as buildings age, they're more susceptible to change. Generally, a property that has exceptional integrity will retain all of its character defining features and will rate highly in all aspects of integrity. A property with exceptional integrity will have undergone few or no alterations since its original construction and won't have been moved from its original location. Additions are either not present or minimally visible from the right-of-way. So any property that was determined to have sufficient or exceptional integrity then moved forward to evaluation. It should be noted, though, that all properties that made it through the screening process, including those with low integrity, have the potential to retain cultural heritage value or interest. Focusing the evaluation process on properties of sufficient and exceptional integrity provided an opportunity for prioritization of the strongest candidates for listing. The evaluation process was used to establish which criteria properties met, with each property having the potential to meet one or more of the evaluation criteria. Properties in the evaluation phase were measured against each of the evaluation criteria based on the historical information that's included in the existing heritage inventory and physical and contextual data collected during the field survey. So the criteria are organized within the categories that are set out by Ontario Regulation 906 of the Ontario Heritage Act in categories of design or physical values, historical or contextual value, historical or associated values, sorry, and contextual. So something could be an early date of construction for the city of Brantford or within a city area, could be a rare or vanishing type throughout the city or within a city area. It could be a rare, representative, or unique architectural style or design. Under historical or associative, could be associated with an organization of significance or an architect or a notable person or event. The contextual criteria we looked at is whether it was located at an intersection and had a design that responded to that corner location. A corner commercial property in a primarily residential neighborhood, and if it was associated with a specific type of development within an area. So using the evaluation criteria and material integrity in combination allows the opportunity to identify which properties are the strongest candidates for inclusion on the Heritage Register. Strong candidates are the properties that meet multiple evaluation criteria and are of exceptional or sufficient material integrity. Equally strong candidates are those properties that retain exceptional or sufficient material integrity and are at a greater risk of loss. Properties which have a greater risk of loss are those that naturally have fewer properties as they reflect unique, rare, or vanishing styles or types, or are part of a collection of properties which have value as a group. For part 2 of the project, the Phase B properties are shown in dark gray on the map. The properties were included or were identified as strong candidates for inclusion on the Heritage Register as non-designated listed properties. So to review, inclusion on the Heritage Register as a non-designated listed property means there are no legal documents registered on the title of the property. Should you apply for a demolition permit, the city has up to 60 days to review and consider options for conservation. However, if a decision is not made by the city within 60 days, then the demolition permit is processed normally. And when you're making alterations or renovations to your property, a heritage permit is not required. So I think we'll just stop here, and I have one more slide that I can pull up when we get to our next steps to share with you Patrick's contact information and key dates. I'll just turn it back to Annie for our question and answer period.
Thank you, Christina. So for this next part of the session, and Patrick, you might want to add something else ahead of time, but we ask that you can either raise the hand at the bottom of the screen. There's a raise hand button. If you prefer, you can also put in your question through the chat option. So we'll try to get to you in order, but just, bear with us, and we ask your patience if we do, ask somebody to speak before another, but we have plenty of time to answer all your questions, and I will try to direct your questions to the most appropriate person, and hopefully we'll get all your questions answered tonight. Patrick, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think that's a good overview. I see we have 2 raised hands right now. So the first is actually Guy Paparella. So you should be able now to talk and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Oh, good. Okay. So I've been retained by the owner. I'm his planning consultant, and I do quite a bit of work for him. And in this situation, I'm talking about 70 Alfred Street, and he owns that property. And I was retained in early January to actually clear the property to apply for a demolition permit. So I have a couple of questions. I realize that it's just a preliminary review. Is it already designated on the property? Is it already a non-designated Heritage Register property, or is it just in the process of being registered? I'm trying to. figure that out?
Yes, thank you. That's a great question. It's currently in the process. ASI has recommended it to be included on the register as a listed property. As part of the process, we're consulting with the public. And then as part of next steps, the city would be presenting our recommendations to the Heritage Committee and then presenting it to council. And ultimately, council would make a decision on these properties. Patrick, would you like to add anything else to that?
Yeah, thanks, Annie. So yeah, guys, so we are, like Annie said, just in the process, and this is the question and answer opportunity. But we will have the upcoming dates posted at the end of this PIC, and they are included in the notice that was mailed out to property owners, but I can just go over that here. So on February 28th, we'll be taking for an overview of this PIC and phase B of the Heritage Register project to the Heritage Committee. And then on March 8th, a report will be sent to the city's Committee of the Whole. And that committee will discuss the Heritage Register project and then make a recommendation to the City Council. Members of the public are able to delegate at either meeting and speak to either committee, or you can provide any written comments in ahead of time. And if they're provided by first, they get included in my staff report.
Okay.
And decisions
I don't want to get too cute. I don't want to get too cute about this, but obviously I've been instructed to apply for a permit. If I apply for a permit now, I've held off after discussing it with Patrick. I wanted to at least have this process unfold, and I was told that it, wouldn't be looked upon as favorably because of this process, and I don't want to. We don't want to stir the pot or create any undue attention. My client is interested in pursuing this to clear the property, market it as its intended use, which was zoned for mixed commercial and residential. We've had interest from people who want to build multi-residential development on this property. So he's not a developer. But he wants to, he's heard that it's a liability to have from these prospective purchasers, that it's a liability at this point. And if the site was clear, it would be more marketable. I've been told by the owner as well that the quality of the tenants are not that great. It's constant need of repairs internally, especially and structurally. There's a lot of issues here. There's a lot of intentional damage. There's numerous break-ins. He finds drug paraphernalia, needles and whatnot around the property. So he's not, and because he lives out of town, it's difficult to manage the property and it's financially not viable to fix it up. So there's reasons behind this. I mean, he respects. He owns another heritage property actually in Hamilton, and he does respect the process. But in this case, it's just not financially viable for him to maintain this property. So I'm looking for some direction in some sense. Obviously, it's not a popular move on my part or on our part, but I need to ask a question about 70 Alfred Street. Was it identified as a low sufficient? Well, I guess it would be either sufficient or exceptional if it's listed on, okay. So could you at least advise whether it's sufficient or an exceptional property? And the second part of that is whether or not the carriage house, what we call the carriage house, which is this outbuilding right beside the home, is also included in that register.
Okay, I'll let Christina answer that question.
Yeah, I'm just to say that I don't have that information right in front of me. I do have the property information sheet up, but it doesn't include specifics on the material integrity. So that's something that we can
if you could get back
after,
to me,
yeah.
Yes, if you could, I'd appreciate that. I know I
Certainly.
put you on the spot. You've got lots of properties, but I'm only inquiring about 70 Alfred Street.
Yeah.
So you have my
so I've
email.
noted,
Patrick has my email. If you could get back to me with some information, at least so I could pass that on to my client and see which way he wants to go. He might, if the carriage house isn't included, he might knock that carriage house down and just maybe sever the home off and sell it as a heritage home, but it's in pretty rough shape. The floorboards, tenants left the bathtub on a couple of times, once intentionally, and just the floorboards are toast in a lot of the home. Windows need to be replaced. The chimney's gone. The roof needs to be replaced. There's just the front porch pillars are rotting, and that needs to be replaced. I'm sure
Okay.
that's part of this. So I don't want to belabor it, but if I could get some information regarding that, at least we can make some decisions going forward without creating too much difficulty for everybody.
For sure. Thank you, Guy. I think we're gonna go to the next question unless you have another specific question to ask.
No, that's fine. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you so much. So I know that I see Lori and Marie, and I think there's also a question in the chat. I have not noticed who raised hands first. I'm not sure if Patrick, you had seen at the beginning.
I think the
Annie,
next
I
question
think
would go to Marie.
Marie.
Oh.
Marie, yes.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing all this work and bringing us to this point. I think it's fabulous. I could not imagine ever tearing down this historical house here on Peel Street. And I understood that it was actually part of the Underground Railroad from slaves coming north. And I would love to learn more about that. And part of my whole idea when I bought this place was that I had learned that a minister owned it and was part of that Underground Railroad. So I think it's fabulous. And I can't imagine that anybody would want to demolish it. But I would like to be able to try to dig up some information about I know how old the house is, and I know some of the speculative history. I want to be able to get more of the history of the house. If I can be steered in a direction where I might be able to do that, it'd be great.
Yeah, so the Brantford Museum and Archives is extremely helpful with property research, and they would be able to assist you with understanding more about the history of your property. It sounds quite interesting and not something that we came across in our research on the property, but like I said, there's still, we were dealing with not a deep dive of research and the breadth of properties. So certainly the Brantford Museum and Archives is your starting point for learning more about your home.
Thank you. I did go, I went to the city and looked at all the documents way back when, and I just wanted more information. Thank you so much, though. I appreciate the time.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marie.
And I think next is where we had Romina is her question in the chat.
I can read that. If we are exempt from requiring approval for property renovations as a listed property, what is to prevent the city from changing that rule later down the road? And also, as I think as a follow-up, if our property is listed, will it be flagged for move to a designated property? In terms of process, I think I'll ask Patrick to answer that question, and then we can add as well if needed.
Thanks, Sandy. So to the question, Romina, the first part, do we change the rule? So no, the requirement for that 60 days worth of notice for any attempt to demolish the buildings or structures on the property, that's set out in legislation. So the city doesn't set that rule, and nor can we change it. When a property is listed, the only control is that requirement for 60 days notice. Now, if the property is flagged, will it be flagged to become designated in the future? Well, if we receive an application or notice of intention to demolish a building or a structure on the property, at that time, we do a review and we prepare a report to our Heritage Committee and Council. And at that point, we look at the condition of the property, what the context is at the time of demolition. So No, there's no guarantee that because your property is listed that it's just delaying a designation. We review the matter at the time of the application.
Thank you for your, can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you for your answer. With the first question, I was asking about the renovation process. So as a listed property, we wouldn't require approval prior to renovating or changing the home. So would your answer with regard to demolition then be the same with regard to that rule not changing?
Yes. So again, any renovation, it's subject to the normal requirements for any other property. So you have to comply with the Ontario Building Code. You have to comply with the city's zoning bylaw, and that's just standard for every property in the city. There's no heritage specific approval required before you do, let's say you do an interior renovation or you construct an addition. That's not reviewed for listed properties through the heritage process.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rumina. And I think next we have Lori with a raised hand.
Yes, hi. I've got a quick question. Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you. I appreciate your process of having these meetings to inform us with the information and having the ability to be able to ask questions. So my question is, if you were not interested in being a part of the Heritage Registry, would you just sort of say so in a meeting like this and maybe send a letter, or are there any other steps to take for asking to not be a part of it?
I will let Patrick answer that one too.
Thanks, Fanny. Yeah, so if you are not interested in your property being listed on the city's heritage register, you can submit either in writing a letter to my email address or to the city to my attention during the project. We do include letters to City Council. Any letter that's received will be provided to Council when it makes its decision. You are also able, if you're interested, to attend either the Brantford Heritage Committee meeting or the Committee of the Whole. We will have dates for those at the end of this PIC, and they are included in the letter that's set out. So that's an option open to anyone who's received the notice.
Thank you very much.
I see Marie, your hand is still up. I'm not sure if it's another
Oh,
question.
I don't mean it to be.
Okay,
I don't mean it to be. I just didn't take it down.
no problem.
Sorry.
No problem at
Taking it
all.
down now.
It's down now. Are there any other questions? I'm not sure if I'm seeing everybody that's here. There's no other questions in the chat, but we do still have some time if anybody else has any other questions.
Thank you very much for the time. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. It's our pleasure.
Yes, thank you very much.
Well, thank you all for coming and with your questions. It's great to have people from the community come in as part of these public consultation meetings. So we appreciate your time with us tonight. But if there's no other questions, I will turn it back over to Patrick and Christina to wrap up the presentation. And yeah.
Right, Christina, thanks for having that slide up. And so, I actually do see another raised hand, Marie.
No, I just lowered it.
All right, looks like it just popped back up. So, all right, I think seeing no further questions, we will call this Property Information Center to a close. But if anyone has questions, and anyone who's watching this recorded PIC, you'll see my contact information on the screen. You can reach out to me by email at pbooser@brantford.ca, or you can call me at my extension 519-759-4150 and extension 5698. If you have any further questions, or if you're seeing this for the first time again, and something you've seen in the PowerPoint or heard from one of our attendees, and you have your own question. So just as we had mentioned earlier in this PIC, the Brantford Heritage Committee will have a presentation made at February 28th, and there'll be a staff report which outlines this phase, the Heritage Register project as a whole, and gives an indication of the properties which are recommended for listing. Following Heritage Committee, a presentation and report will go to Committee of the Whole, and that will occur on March 8th. Committee of the Whole is a committee made up of city councilors. They will make a recommendation to council for final decision on March 22nd. Any written comments which are provided to me and that are received by February 21st will be provided as part of the report to council for their consideration. Members of the public are able to attend as delegates. You do need to register, but you can attend any meeting of the Brantford Heritage Committee, the Committee of the Whole, or council as a delegate on your item. I believe that addresses everything at tonight's meeting. So thank you all for attending and for watching. And again, if there's any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, and I can always contact Christina or Annie if we need to get more detail for a response to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.